Welcome back. Now, despite the focus on the work the government's been doing to deal with the coronavirus crisis, the majority of Parliament's committees continue to meet via Zoom and Skype as its work continues largely out of the public eye. One of those committees is the Senate Select Committee on Autism, which has been tasked with developing a national Australian autism strategy and is meeting today. Joining us now is that committee's chair, Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes. Hollie Hughes, thank you for your time. What exactly will you be looking at today?
Good morning, Annalise. So today's the very first day of the Senate Select Committee into autism, and we'll be meeting with and hearing from a number of organisations. And the terms of reference for this inquiry are quite broad. We're going to be looking at whole-of-life experience for people with autism and their families. So we'll be starting to talk about diagnosis, we'll be starting to look at early intervention and how families start to navigate that pathway. But we're also going to look at supports through education, supports into the workforce. Employment is a very, very big factor for those with autism, and more particularly underemployment. So we're going to look at how we can start looking at those issues and addressing them more effectively, but also starting to look at things with interactions with the justice system, as well as looking at housing solutions. The justice system in particular is important for late teens and young adults with autism because of communication challenges and difficulty in reading social cues. So there can be some issues around that. But we're also going to look at health and mental health. And as we know, mental health is a big focus at the moment with the coronavirus, but people with autism are quite often treated through the mental health frontline services as mental health conditions being part of their autism, not something separate to it, and how those mental health frontline workers can work with people with autism more effectively and make sure that they're getting the appropriate supports. But really fundamentally, the National Autism Strategy is about ensuring people with autism and their families have the opportunity to live their best lives.
You've touched on a few different issues there. From your perspective, what's the biggest failing in the approach to getting people with autism the support they need to be functioning and really thriving members of society?
So I think one of the big issues, if we look now, there's around 3% of children have an autism diagnosis, and autism is a lifelong condition. But if you meet one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's not a simple disability or condition where everyone's going to look the same. It's also a condition that doesn't have a physical test. So it's very much driven diagnostically via behaviours. So there's lack of consistency around diagnosis, but it's really that whole of life. So it's very difficult to point to one part where the system's failing. I think we see significant issues through the education system. There seems to be an expectation with a lot of supports that exist for families both before and after school and on weekends, but somehow or other during school hours, these kids don't require the same amount of support. This means that kids aren't getting the level of education that they should be getting. It's leading to absenteeism, it's leading to social isolation, and then of course it factors on to underemployment as these kids leave school. These kids are amazing. Autistic children and adults, one of the skills that they do have, and I think we do need to look at what the contribution is that they can make, they have a laser-like focus into many of their special interest areas in a way that neurotypical people certainly don't have, and they have a massive contribution to make. And I think the society and community need to really start to understand that they might have a few little quirks, they might have a few little hand flaps or walking on toes or whatever their sensory issues might be around those, around their autism, but they also have a massive contribution to make. So we need to do much, much better at ensuring at all of those stages of development, they're getting the supports that they need to ensure they can make a contribution to our community.
And I know this is an issue you're quite in touch with, given your son has autism and you're quite in touch with the community. Are there any specific challenges you've heard from people with autism, their family members and loved ones during the coronavirus pandemic specifically?
Look, it's very difficult because people with autism like routine. They like things being the same. And so obviously a lot of people with autism are struggling with the changes in their routine, their inability to do what they've always done, go where they normally go and participate in the activities that they like to. For a lot of children with autism who go to a particular school and go to school that particular route and like to do things in a very occasionally rigid but definitely a routine way, this uncertainty is very difficult. That said, some of the social isolation, the staying at home, some of our kids are enjoying that just a little bit too much because it's giving them the opportunity to avoid that socialisation that can be a little bit difficult for them. So more time at home on YouTube and playing with Minecraft, some of them are enjoying probably just a little bit too much.
I'm probably not in a position to criticise anyone on that front, but Senator Hollie Hughes, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Annalise.